give it at least maybe even a fraction of artificial intelligence? I mean, I know that there's a news story that I was reading just recently where they're actually squaring off computer against computer as far as artificial intelligence is concerned. And we know that as processing power goes along, that if we move on to something like DNA processors, smaller, faster computers, that the possibility of artificial intelligence increases because there's so much more that can be done. If the bot itself had an ability to do artificial intelligence, let's say, to where it could latch on to something that's extremely hot and kind of cut your workload as trying to interpret it, do you think the results might be the same? I mean, it's pure speculation, but
I would suspect that you're correct. There's a certain amount of confidence that comes along with the growing database sizes over time. The system has built-in positive feedback loops as well as some like negative reinforcement feedback loops, so that we do get a constraint. And actually, theoretically, I suppose if one had a fast enough supercomputer and you could do this all in real time, you would be tapping into fundamentally what is the consciousness stream being expressed in a random, or more or less, we would think, fashion by all the humans on the planet. So you could probably actually make a computer conscious that way. It'd be really, really, really cool to do. Be a whole bunch of work, though.
Yeah, indeed it would be. Indeed it would be. Out of from all this time that you've been doing this, has there ever been anything that you came across, something that shocked you or surprised you from the data more than anything else?
Yeah, and it's a terrible, nasty, personal kind of a story, and I really hate telling it, but it goes to the core of what we do and why. We had this particular occurrence a few years back, like 2003, I think, and I didn't know what I was doing fiscally. I never do. Universe provides or it doesn't, so I was just bumbling along. I ran into a situation where I had a big need for money for bandwidth. I'd been using bandwidth exceptionally and had to come up with $4,000 or $5,000 really rapidly to pay the bills, just to keep going. There was this individual who was very high up in alternative currencies communities and a very smart fellow, and almost everybody would know him, and I'm not going to say who it is, who contacted me through a friend, and he offered to buy a run, basically, for the amount of money I needed to keep going. And I thought this was cool. I took his money, and he asked me to do a run on himself. And I got this stuff about the blessed marriage and so on, and then he discovered, as we were into it about 3 weeks or so, that really all we were ever going to find was negative information. And that's just kind of the way it works, is that we have a tendency to pick up the negative in the extreme language more than we do anything else, even though we're concentrating on the nuance.
Yeah.
We're looking for the opposite ends of a boundary. And so we got some rather disturbing information about his marriage, and 2 weeks later his wife was killed in a car bomb that was meant for him. So since then I don't do personal runs, and you can see that it's deeply affecting.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Well, the fact that it can pick up the negative aspects, I mean, every time we turn on our television or open up a paper or read a magazine, that's kind of all we're kind of bombarded with. I mean, there's little snippets of, fluffy little stories, but the majority of it is pretty depressing. And it's gotten to the point where I hate to even turn on the news, but I kind of forced to just because of the fact of the nature of what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But on the psyche of the population, that really it takes root and it really takes effect on it. As a matter of fact, a lot of people do meditation and stuff. They say they don't do it, and the less they watch TV, the less negative information they're taking into themselves, the better they feel. For one, is that possibly why you get more of the negativities in the data?
That certainly is something we see happening. Now, it certainly could be causative, but I have to be cautious because we want to be intellectually honest about this and say that basically what we did was to assign, or basically what I did was to assign numeric values as an indicator of positive or negative emotion, if you will, to these various things. And so it might have been my own twisted psyche that set these things up in such a way that all I pick up is the negative. But given that as a potential flaw in the system, I would have to agree with you that there has certainly been a very large increase in that since the brief period of 10 years or so that I've been doing these runs on an active basis. And I know that there is what we call memering, or thought virus engineering going on the Internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that same kind of stuff occurring in the language that appears within the media stream as we see through network and cable television. And this memering or thought virus is a very specific form of what is known as neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an active attempt to create fear. And you'll notice it in the language of, the current boob in charge when he comes on out a few weeks back and says, he didn't say like FDR, calm, nothing to fear but fear itself, everybody chill, right? He came on out and started spouting fear and anxiety, got to do this quick or everybody's going to freak out, and all this other stuff, right?
Yes.
So they're promoting the fear. They're attempting to manipulate the emotions in a very negative way.
Indeed they are. As a matter of fact, just last week when he comes out, and as he's speaking, as the words are leaving his lips, the stock market plummets, 300 points or something like that, which just says that, to me anyway, is that even the financial markets, even the global economists know that it's not true. Everything they say is not true, and they react towards it. Emotion, like you said, very interesting. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to continue with the phone lines open and get some of your emails. Email me, CaptainJack@WPRTradio.com, and Felix will tell you how to call in right now. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Paranormal Radio. It's Monday night. My guest tonight is Clif from halfpasthuman.net, and we're talking about bot technology that can pull data from different message boards from all over the world, and what comes out of it is possibly what suggests it's forecasting the future in a sense. It's very, very interesting. And we're going to talk more about that. Cliff, welcome on back to the program, first of all.
Okay, nice crickets, yeah.
I got an email here. It says, this is very fascinating, but could it be that there's so much data being pulled that you can just kind of apply it to certain things? I mean, I'm not a tech...
Sure. That has to be examined as a thing as a component of all forecasting of any kind, prophecy or whatever.
Yes.
You can make your language so vague that it fits anything and everything.
Yes.
And it's just, again, the mental perception of the filters of the people that are observing the apparition. So, yeah, sure, we could certainly do that. It certainly is not our intent, and we try and be intellectually honest as we go along. As you know, having read our reports of trying to peg dates and specific examples to what we're doing. Mm-hmm. The stuff that we put out on the public forum we kind of see as public announcements, because the more people, for instance, that are aware a large earthquake are coming, then will take, or potentially, will take precautions, lash things down, this sort of a deal.
Sure.
And they'll be, should it happen, they're less agitated, and they can help out people that weren't quite as prepared. And so it kind of dampens down the emotions of the whole thing.
Yes.
But, it certainly must be examined with anybody, including ourselves. I love a good skeptic, and it's scary sometimes how close we come on the language. We put in what we can in the reports, which get to be very voluminous and tedious to read for people. Mm-hmm. And even that is only a small fraction of the thousands of words. And so sometimes we may have a description that has 15 or 18 or 20 words that hit the public media one way or another. Mm-hmm. But behind that, in some reports, there might be hundreds, perhaps even thousands, that are more detail-oriented about it, and so we can say with some specificity that we got it a little bit better than was publicly acknowledged. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Let me ask you, you mentioned the earthquakes. I've had Jim Birkeland and Cal Ori on the program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who they are, but they've been able to, in talking with Jim, as far as his predictions on earthquakes, is it's pretty impressive. Now, we know we had this huge earthquake in China recently, killed hundreds of people, 100,000 people, something like that, and then they just had another one recently. Did the technology pull anything about earthquakes before it happened?
Sure, we get that frequently. The China one, we got a lot of associations with the wedding interrupted and the church that showed up a few weeks later that was all over the internet and the media. where a couple was actually in the act of getting married and the church came down around their ears, but everybody came out. Mm-hmm. We got that and actually posted warnings for a large earthquake about 36 hours before it occurred. And on Georgia's urban survival site, we put it out there, I think, 29 hours actually before it occurred. We'd been talking about it, though, within our reports maybe a month and a half or 2 months before that, in general sense of an earthquake that was associated with the wedding. And we knew at time because we had a prominent wedding pairing, which was also the Jenna Bush wedding that weekend. Mm-hmm. And so, because we knew part of our data suggested that some people attending the wedding would have to rush out due to the earthquake, not that they were involved in it, but because it was so large that it would demand their attention. And sure enough, a bunch of the American people related to international relief and stuff that were at the wedding were involved. So we get a bunch of the data around it, and we do have stuff for twin earthquakes coming up in December. Oh. That should be fairly large, and the descriptors around them seem to indicate damage, and at least one instance bloody. Now, bear in mind that earthquakes themselves rarely kill people. Usually it's not